to everyone out there. If you're looking for my live feed today, don't look like that's going to happen. So I'm recording the program today, and we will get back to. I'll put it online later on today, but the internet is conspiring to derail me, and that seems to have been the case lately. Anyway, without further ado, welcome to the program today. Of course, I'm Michael Jenkins. Crisp, cool November morning out there. The weather kind of turned on us the last couple of days, but it's okay. It always turns back beautiful. I'm feeling really good today. Why am I feeling good today? I'm feeling good today for many reasons. Number one, high school football playoff has begun. Basketball is just getting underway. NBA hoops is happening. NFL headed toward December and their schedule. College hoops on the move, moving into the forefront. College football, they're moving into their decision-making time where they're going to determine who's going to participate in this new format they have for the national championship. And I'm excited about that. They've moved on to multiple teams now, like 12, where before they were messing around with 4 teams and calling it a tournament. It's not a tournament if you got whatever. But anyway, that's coming to a head with all the teams jockeying for positions now. So it's a great time in sports. Excuse me. First thing I want to do is recap the high school football scores. Of course, we had quite a few players locally who were in the dance as of yesterday. You had Dillon, Latta, Mullins, Lakeview, South Florence, Darlington, Hartsville. And I believe Mullins and Latta were the only two of that group that dropped out, or should I say, been eliminated from competition. But we do want to take a look at the scores from last night. And let's see what we got here. Scores from last night. All righty. No. And that's the media poll. Let's see what we got here. So like I said, the internet is hating on me lately, man. I can't seem to get anything done because I am so dependent upon them. And as of right now, it looks like I'm hitting another one of those no internet situations. But we will endeavor to try anyway. Okay, Plan B. As I said, basketball season is in full tilt now in Marion County. Practice started a couple of weeks ago, boys and girls. I had a little back and forth with DJ Kelly and kind of touch bases just a tad with Eric Troy. So, Mullins had a lot of basketball players on the football team. And now those players can kind of get themselves ready to transition to basketball. Mullins had a good football season, and I want to congratulate them for giving it a good shot this year. They did make the playoff. Their coach, Mark Lowry, has done a really good job with them. So Mullins football people should feel good this morning, even though they got beat last night. They should feel good that their season was really a turnaround situation for them. And I see the excitement all up and down the Mullins football spear, if you will. I see the rec guys doing it. I'm seeing pictures for them and how they're progressing, which means these are the next guys. Now, Savion is a guy that was coaching one of these teams, and he's a former Mullins football player and basketball player. It seems like he's found his niche. He's doing something that obviously he loves, and he's making great strides with the youngsters that he's bringing along. Sounds to me that this is a guy that needs to be more connected with the program, directly connected. I'm not trying to give the guy a job or anything, but certainly when you have guys with this kind of energy in the community that's giving what they're giving, then it might be in your best interest to bring those guys a little bit closer. See, I think what people who have not coached in rec and youth sports don't understand, and if they did, they'd probably be more involved. And that is that these youngsters, once you've coached sports in the rec, it never ends. You may stop coaching, but the things that you get from it and that you've gotten from it, you really can't measure it. Now, I remember before I ever coached anything, I had just moved down here from New York, and my wife went and signed up one of my daughters to play basketball. So she said, yeah, she came home, she said, I signed Kiana up to play basketball. And Kiana was all excited. And she said, well, oh, by the way, I signed you up too. You're going to be a coach. I'm like, what are you talking about? You signed me up to be a coach. Well, she said, I signed you up to be a coach. So that started my rec coaching experience, which lasted another 10 years after that at least. At one point I was coaching multiple teams. I mean, I really got into it. But all these years later, I still got these guys who are now grown men calling me coach. The bonding that took place between myself and these youngsters, it was immeasurable. But it also did something else. I had not written anything for the local newspaper at that point. In fact, I had not written anything for anybody because I didn't know I could do any writing. But in a couple of years, the opportunity presented itself to me that I would write for the newspaper and be the sports reporter for them. Well, you know what? The whole coaching experience that I had in the rec came back in a positive way. Because now all those kids that I was coaching and coaching against, well, they had grown up and became JV and varsity players. So I knew them all. And I think that gave me a leg up on really putting them out there and, just kind of highlighting them. Because I already knew them, most of them. So the payoff was incredible. And like I said, it's still happening today. And I'm sure a lot of you out there who've coached rec sports feel the same way. It's probably the best thing that you've ever done. Certainly it was the best thing that I've ever done. Even had a chance to coach my son when he got a little bigger and he came along. So now let's talk a little bit briefly about what's happening and what has happened around here in basketball, in sports for the last 30 years or so. And I've come to the conclusion that the best era for sports that these eyes have seen was right on through the 90s, starting around 89, right on through 90s, very early 2000s. That's when you had, to me, the greatest conglomeration of football and basketball players. All through that era, Mullins and Marion basketball were loaded. Mullins with the Dewani Flagger era and Eric Gerald era. Marion with the Terrell McKelvey, Quincy Goss era. I don't think that the youngsters today can even understand how big it was back then. Because then you had the Britain's Neck folks down there, you had the Terrells Bay. So we essentially had four public schools who were all basketball schools, basically. Terrells Bay and Britain's Neck, smaller schools, but basketball was always important coming from down there. When I looked at Mullins and Marion and the Titans that they had and the battles that they had all through the 90s, to me, I can't see it. I hadn't seen anything like it since. I remember when I met Dewani Flagger for the first time. I think he was a freshman, a rising freshman at Mullins High. And I ran into him in Mullins one day, and I was saying, "Hey, man," it was before the season started. I said, "Man, are you worried about Terrell and Quincy?" he said, "No." He was always cocky. He said, "No." He said, "They need to be worried about me." Turns out he was right, because he went on to be one of the best Mullins has ever had, and was one of the key parts in Mullins winning the state championship. Turns out Mark Gerald's only state championship. So that was one thing. So football wise, Mullins had, well, no doubt, they had the best football team I've ever seen in Mullins. And this was 95, 96, 97, in that time frame. It's amazing how they kind of grew up out of nowhere. The people who coached them at the Rec wouldn't say that they grew up out of nowhere. They were preparing for this. But all of a sudden, after Marion handling them decisively for 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and sometimes beating them 2 times in one season, because there was a time when Mullins and Marion were meeting twice on the football field in the season. And all of a sudden, Mullins got really, really good. So now you had Dewani Flagger in that crowd facing off against James Scott, Mario Ford, Reggie Furness in that crowd. It was a very, very exciting time. And this went on all through the 90s. The rivalry was at its best. So when anybody wants to talk about it, then, you think back even earlier in the 90s with Marlon Davis, and you had, who's this guy? Leslie Roberts, Deion Howard. All these guys came along around the same time. And they battled. So if you were around that time, you would probably agree with me. Oh boy, I got a little bit of internet, so now I'm going to transition to this. Looking at the basketball conference, the conference this year in basketball, and I think this conference is going to be really tough. With Marion, East Clarendon, Kingstree, Lake City, Manning, Mullins. I think it's going to be tough this year. And I believe that whoever comes out of that conference as champ is going to have a very good chance of doing some things on the statewide level. Let's see if I can delve a little bit closer into this internet and see if there's something else. And by the way, folks, I'm wearing my Eagles gear today, and I wore it for a reason. But it looks like no one's going to be able to see it until later, which is terrible. I wanted this especially for the Cowboy haters, because they didn't have a good week. They did not have a good week. Well, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to pull that up. So that's another wrench in things. I want to take a look at the rankings for this week and the scores for this week, but it's just bad. It's almost like I have to start preparing this program with the internet not being in mind. Like I used to do, it was all on paper. My notes were all on paper. I didn't depend on the internet for scores. I brought a newspaper every Saturday morning, and that's what I brought to the radio station, and that's how I was able to read the scores. But become so dependent upon this stuff that, okay, I got some scores for last night. Last night, Hartsville Red Foxes, who got off to a bumpy start, I think they had a tie in their first game. Well, they got back on track as the playoff begun with a 45-21 victory over Beaufort. Green Sea Floyd, I seen them earlier in the year against Mullins. I didn't figure them for a playoff team. They did make the playoff, but they got bounced last night by Cross, 48-0. Mullins traveled to Philip Simmons down in Charleston last night. And when I looked at the recap, Mullins scored first. I guess that might have been something to kind of excite the troops a little bit. They got off to a 6-0 lead. But when the dust had settled, 45-12, Philip Simmons moves on, and Mullins comes home for basketball. Dillon, a team that is one of the premier outfits in the state, definitely one of the shining stars, one of the beacons of sports, football in particular, around in the PD area. They moved on over Battery Creek last night with a 42-7 win in Dillon. South Florence Bruins, who've been very good, they won a state championship. They should have won another one last year. They didn't, but here they are again, and they are knocked off Brooklyn Casey, 56-20. Kingstree is a school that I don't know who was really excited about Kingstree last year. I mean, coming into the season, but all of a sudden Kingstree is on a roll, and they went on the road last night, knocked off Whale Branch 34-18. Aner got off to a good start in their playoff game last night, but in the end, Orangeburg Wilkinson took care of business 35-16. Lake City got taken out by Timberland 20-15. Lakeview Wild Gators knocked off Hardyville 36-7. Carvers Bay got off to a decent start against Denmark Olar last night, but in the end, Denmark Olar 22, Carvers Bay 16. Johnsonville went on the road last night, and they came away with a 43-41 victory over Branchville. Midland Valley, Darlington, and the Falcons, I don't know that they made the playoff last year, but they had been out of the money for a while. Now they're back. Knocked off Midland Valley 22-15 last night. Hannah Pamlico Red Raiders hosted Military Magnet last night in Hannah Pamlico 43. Military Magnet 6. Ladder Vikings, a team that has had problems all year scoring, that continued last night as they were shut out by Baptist Hill 16-0. Crestwood and Hilton had in a close one, but Crestwood fell 19-17. Lamar Silver Foxes hosted Whitmire last night, and in the end, Lamar 62-0 over Whitmire. Then there's Andrews and East Clarendon. We got to see East Clarendon here in Marion, and they nipped Marion, and they got a playoff berth, and that playoff berth was against Andrews. And in the end, East Clarendon nipped Andrews by a score of 14-12. So those are some scores from last night. I'm looking at score stream here, and it says Marion has a basketball game. When? It says Monday at 9 o'clock. Now, you know nobody's playing no basketball game at 9 o'clock. Come on, Max Prep. Y'all can do better than this. Who starts a basketball game at 9 o'clock? Max Prep. Help me out here. Let's see what else we got. The Carolina Panthers. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything, and maybe the website would have came up. But Xavier Legette right now is doing extremely well for the Panthers. And I was going to read the statistics to you. But he's one of the leaders on his team in receiving, catches made, and even touchdowns from a receiver standpoint. So congratulations to him. I think that going forward, he and the little quarterback that they have there can really develop something going forward. And but certainly, I was watching a promo last week for a Panthers game against the Giants, and Zay was one of the features in the promo. So that tells you that his star is rising. He's playing extremely well, and I know that we're all proud of him right now. Next week, Clemson and Carolina play their annual grudge match. Gamecocks, I believe, became ranked this week. Clemson has stumbled again. So, there's no telling who's going to win that game. I mean, I'm trying to think of, TJ's on the team, so I'm probably going to be pulling for Gamecocks. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Plus, they got some other kids from down here, Conway and all that stuff. Let's take a look at the NBA for a second. And right now, there's one undefeated team in all the NBA land, and that would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are 14-0 and lead the Eastern Conference. They're followed by the Boston Celtics, who are the defending champs. Now, I believe that this is the year that Cleveland makes that next step. I think they have all the talent, all the pieces to make a serious run this year. Quite possibly get to the finals, and who knows, if they get there, all bets are off. But they have a great nucleus of size, backcourt people. I just think that they're going to be a team. They're a team to watch. The Knicks, who are in fourth place right now, made some moves over the summer, and people in New York were excited about last year. I really wasn't. I don't think the Knicks are a championship team this year. We'll have to see what happens going forward. Jalen Brunson, who is a player, he's from Mullins. I mean, he's not from Mullins, but he has connections in Mullins. And I don't want to bash him or anything, but I think they gave him way too much money. I don't think he's the kind of player that he was last year. He played outstanding last year, played way over his head. I figured that at some point they were going to figure him out because he's not that athletic. He's not that big. But what he has is court savvy and know-how. And I believe that's why he really prospered last year and had some amazing games, especially in the playoff. Looking over at the western side, you have Oklahoma City, which a lot of people are picking to come out of the West this year. I'm not. I'm picking a team that's second in the standing. That would be the Golden State Warriors, who are playing outstanding basketball, who have a nucleus, have a very deep bench. I think the thing that sets them apart this year is their defense. Because when you're playing 10 guys or more, you have a lot of room to maneuver. You have a lot of, you know, you have a lot of abilities to overwhelm teams with that depth. And so far, they have it. Uh, Looking down, you have Phoenix, you have LA Lakers right now, and this might be a good place to pause here. The LA Lakers are playing pretty decent basketball right now. They're 8-4. LeBron, even though he's only playing one half of the court, he's still putting up big numbers. But the story with the Lakers right now is none of those things. The story is Bronny James saga. Now, they said they were going to send Bronny down to the G League, and they kind of did, sort of. But what's happening now is he's only going to be with the D League team when they are playing at home. But of course, they got a road schedule too, right? Well, he's not gonna travel with them, these slobs, these little bums. He's not gonna travel to play with them. He'll be staying at home and sitting on the bench for the varsity Lakers. Who does this? You know, as time goes on, the longer this thing goes on, the more ridiculous it seems, to the point now where you even have LeBron supporters, national supporters, are saying, wait a minute, this is getting ridiculous. Now, this guy is sitting on the bench. He's not playing. And there's a reason that he's not playing, because he's not good. Even though I could see a scenario where he could end up being a decent player one day. I don't know how good. I know right now he's not very good. And how LeBron was able to pull off this whole fiasco is beyond me. The league has sat by and watched this madness. And it's kind of hard to believe. But it still persists. He sits on the bench. I seen a couple of clips last week when he was down on the G League team or D League team. And he scored a couple of points and he didn't look bad doing it. But he's just nowhere near where he needs to be a consistent player. And he's nowhere near being a player that's on the NBA level. And for him to be sitting there with the Lakers jersey on, with a Laker uniform on, sitting on the bench, traveling with the Los Angeles Lakers, it's ridiculous. But I feel bad for him. And if there's any blame to go around, it's going to go to his dad, who has decided that it's more important that he have a little take a kid to work day than actually helping his son develop his game with hopes that maybe one day he'll be an NBA level player. Right now, he's not. Anyway, folks, sorry for the snafus today, but, we'll get it together. And I'll be back next week with more. And you have a wonderful, safe week. Later.